Outbreak as Washington and Teheran meet once again in a bid to reach a framework agreement on regard Iran's nuclear program. The Israeli elections are only hours away. What's the connection between the two? Closer than one may think. The News Today diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg summarizes the romance between the Iranian talks and Netanyahu's election campaign.
We must always remember three things. First, Iran. Second, Iran. And third, Iran, again and again.
Well, you can't say he didn't try. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did his very best to turn the Iranian nuclear issue into the main subject of the elections.
My friends, I've come here today because as Prime Minister of Israel, I feel a profound obligation to speak to you about an issue that could well threaten the survival of my country and the future of my people.
But even his high-profile speech to U.S. Congress and the fact that for about 2 weeks it was one of the main issues spoken about in Israel was not enough to convince the public.
When we speak about housing rates, the cost of living, I never forget life itself. The biggest challenge for our lives at the moment is Iran, armed with nuclear weapons.
I never forget life itself rapidly became one of the catchphrases of these elections as mockery and teasing spread throughout the social media, turning the Iranian issue from a newsworthy subject to a political joke. Yet for Western powers in Tehran, there's no time for jokes, as the third self-imposed deadline to reach a framework agreement is right around the corner, March 31st.
As you all know, we have set the end of the month as the deadline. And so we will be going into this understanding that time is critical. I can't tell you whether or not we can get a deal or whether we're close.
And in this not-so-optimistic state of mind, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif resumed the nuclear talks Monday in Switzerland in an attempt to narrow gaps and overcome difficulties which were raised in the last rounds of negotiations. Kerry, under major pressure in Washington not to strike a soft agreement, wants Iran to dramatically scale down its nuclear program in order to make it much more difficult to develop atomic weapons. Zarif, himself under pressure from hardliners to get painful sanctions eased, says Iran's atomic program is for purely peaceful purposes and that Tehran wants to expand its activities. Officials close to negotiations were quoted as saying a breakthrough is unlikely, but the determination of both sides to finalize a solution is still high.
Now, I want you to think about that.